And you're live. Hello and welcome to Forever Rugby. We are finally back with our weekly news shows, which I've been trying to do for a while, but trying to find time when I'm not working and stuff like that. And it's a free night and stuff like that. It becomes very difficult. So it has been a while since we did one of these. We started doing them quite regularly last year and started getting quite successful. And I really enjoy this type of show because it really allows us to dig quite deep into the current situation of South African rugby and to have these conversations and to debate and sort of see what everybody else is sort of thinking and stuff like that, and to sort of talk about some of the stuff going on in South African rugby. And so it's I mean, we're 1st of February, so we're a month into 2022, and there's still a lot of rugby to be played over the rest of the year. In fact, I mean, it's going to be a pretty chock-a-block calendar from now until the end of the year, when you think that we've still got basically the entire Currie Cup. We've still got URC up until June, July. Six Nations is about to begin for the Northern Hemisphere sides. We've got then all the Springbok calendar, and then we get back into sort of the URC and stuff like that. Fassi Cup is back in a big way. Varsity Shield and stuff like that. So we're kind of sort of moving back towards a bit more of a sort of reality in South African rugby, which is good to see. Because we haven't really had it for a couple of years. And I think that, if you look at the structure and stuff like that, it has been so many changes over the last couple of years that what we need now is some consistency. We just need week in, week out, year in, year out, a structure that we can allow to actually grow. And the structure is now us committing to playing in the URC for the future, and hopefully in a year's time we're going to be talking about us playing in the European Champions Cup and the European Challenge Cup. And as we start to get more sort of back towards normality, we can talk about traveling, and having an away game in Europe on a Saturday, and a week later being back at Ellis Park, being back at Loftus, but then on the Sunday jumping on and suddenly being in Ireland and playing games, stuff like that. And that's what we want to be at. That's the whole thing about the URC, is that it's a global league that's more than just a tour. Because back in Super Rugby, it was very much a case of you'd go on your tour leg where you play 4 matches overseas. Whereas now we've got a very extended URC calendar, which starts basically October through to June, and you can play 1 week in South Africa, 1 week Ireland, 1 week South Africa, 1 week Ireland, maybe next week in Italy and stuff like that. And the whole idea is that you play as many home games as you do away games, which is not the case in Super Rugby, especially back by the end, where it was, you played your conferences twice at home and stuff like that, and you play everybody at home and away. So we still have that to a certain degree, but because we play so many more teams, and we play all the teams, I think, which is why important. There were those years in Super Rugby where you just didn't play certain teams. And that wasn't great. You want to play every single game. You want to be able to, every single team. You want to be able to go everywhere and know that within a 2-year cycle, you will play every single side, both home and away. And especially when it gets to the European Champions Cup, how cool it would be to play a quarterfinal and be playing at in Ireland, stuff like that. And we can start having traveling fans stuff. And so I'm very excited about it. And I'm very excited that we're starting to move towards a bit of normality. But tonight, what I want to talk about is the Springbok 15 jersey. We're talking about Fassi, whether he is the successor to Willie Leroux, which is the head of the video. So obviously, we're going to talk about that quite a lot because I don't have an opinion, but we're going to talk about it a bit now. I don't think he's the next in line, and we'll talk about why. Obviously, it's quite obvious why I don't think he's the next in line. Obviously, other things we need to talk about. We've got Currie Cup tomorrow, so we can look at some of the teams and what we can expect there. We've got another round of a URC coming up this weekend, so we can talk a little bit about that as well. Six Nations are starting on Saturday, so we can talk a little bit about that. And just sort of have a general conversation. Obviously, it's a long time since we're going to see the Springboks back in action, so it's difficult to sort of talk too much about the Springbok stuff like that. But what we talk about when it comes to Springboks are all the players that are playing well, all the players that are in form, which players are pushing themselves to be part of that squad, which players of the Box squad maybe aren't playing well enough to maybe consider getting back in that squad, because there's always that sort of conversation about idea about picking form or reputation, because there are certain players that might not have a particularly good domestic season, but have been so good for the Springboks over the years that how can you not pick them? And there's always that grapple between the idea of form as temporary, class as permanent, and where do you draw the line, and who do you back and who don't you back. So we've quite a lot to talk about over the next sort of half an hour, 45 minutes. Depends how we go, isn't it? But yeah, so let me know. The whole point of the show has to be interactive. So I need you guys to start commenting and stuff like that. We're going to go through comments now. We're going to start having this conversation. We're going to start having different opinions, stuff like that. But the whole idea is that, you guys got a voice, I got a voice, and we just talk about that. That's what these shows are for. And hopefully we can get more of these shows in the coming weeks. So Mordecai says, and Rugby says, Gelant for me, been consistent whole URC. Vic says, Bosch is back. Hope he has a good game tomorrow. Greg Morgan says, it's a shame, but to be a BOK is a tough business. And Leandre Bayer says, no disrespect to him. He's a great rugby player. I mean, he's definitely in line, but to select him over Gelant doesn't make sense. Now, that's where I am at. And that's where I thought I'd have this video, because I'll be interested. I want you to gauge what the general feeling is, what the public's feeling is. How is your average South African fan feeling? Because it is one thing that most fans were agreeing with last year. They don't want Willie Leroux at fullback. That has been made abundantly clear that majority, I think a large portion of Springbok fans want a Willie Leroux replacement. The problem then comes in is, who is the Willie Leroux replacement? And it's not quite as simple as just going and picking the best performing fullback. It can be to a certain degree, but you've got to. It's about the roles. The Springbok squad is not necessarily positions. It's roles. And it's what role do you play within the 23? What role do you play within the squad? And I think that's a very interesting way to look at it, because it is the modern game where I think that the idea of an open side, blind side, and an eighth man is starting to whittle away to a certain degree. The idea that a hooker as just somebody who throws the ball into line out and scrums is moving away. Dan Cole showed how important it is to have a hooker that can play with ball in hand, and it's a very good ball carrier. So I think what's quite interesting when you look at the box setup is you're looking at the roles. And now, so you're not just saying who's our next fullback, you're saying who's our next Willie Leroux. Because in our current system, you have to replace what he gives you. So what does Willie Leroux give us? Now, the biggest thing I think Willie Leroux gives is his reading of the game. Defensively, he's not world class. His kicking game it's been a lot better than it has been the last few months. But I think the most important thing that Willie Leroux does is, on defense, he very much sort of reads the game, and he's very important in terms of positioning people and communication across that back three. But very importantly on the attack, he brings the creativity. He plays as that playmaker. How often have we seen him join the line, especially on a counter-attack, especially on turnover ball, where he can come and assess the space, assess the situation, and he makes decisions whenever we attack with ball in hand. Andre Pollard, often, when he's distributing, it's either, it's going to the box, the up and under, or it's going for a deep kick in behind, or, will often sort of go to first receive or carry himself. You're never going to see Andre Pollard, throwing skip passes and, inside pops and chicken wing passes, stuff like that. He's not that type of player. I think he is more creative than what he gets licensed to do, but that's what Willie Leroux brings you. Willie Leroux brings you the reading of the game that finds the space, and he's a playmaker. He's a good distributor of the ball. He gets the back line going. He himself is not counter-attacking, chipping and chasing, going through and stuff like that. He's not a counter-attacking fullback. He's just not that type of player, but he's far more of a playmaker. And I think in that, if you look at then the role he has to fill, that's your biggest argument for going Warrick Gelant over Fassi. And I think Fassi is a wonderful player. I think he's got pace. I think he's got a big boot on him. I think he's very solid under the high ball. He's not the smallest guy either. He's got X factor. He's a very exciting player. However, I don't think he fits the mold of a Springbok 15. I don't think he's a playmaker. I don't think he's a particularly good distributor. I don't think he's someone who, when he joins the line, reads the space and wants to try and put people into space or try and draw and create space. He's very much the type of players who you kick deep for him and then he'll counterattack. He's going to punish you. And I think that's what makes it so exciting, because he's got that electric pace about him that he'll find a half gap, he'll chip and chase, he will by himself put in a counterattack, which is great, but I don't think that's the type of player we're looking for. Warrick Gelant for me is a very special player. And to be fair, I don't think 2 years ago, if you were having this conversation, nobody would even be blinking, because Warrick Gelant was always going to be the successor to Billy Leroux. Warrick Gelant is a World Cup winner. People forget this. He was part of that squad that won the World Cup. He was in the setup. He's been supposed to be Billy Leroux's success for quite a long time. He's always, had the talent and was always thought about as the long-term fullback option, especially the rugby he was playing, just before that sort of World Cup. And for me, since he's come back, he looked like, first of all, before his injury, he looked really good as well. And then he was out for 9 months, but he's come back since September last year, September, October, and he's just looked a different class. I don't think I've watched too many players who have such good game awareness, where he understands where everybody is around him. He understands where the space is. He understands where the opportunities are. He understands sometimes when it's not on to run with the ball. And his kicking game, is very creative in terms of he won't always just, bomb it down the middle of the field. He'll search for this pocket of space and, right, let's put the ball in there. Or there's nobody here. So his game awareness, he just looks like one of those players that plays with a lot of time. Lakanya, when he's playing his best rugby, just seems to have that extra bit of time on the ball. And Warrick Gelant is somebody like that. And he's produced now this year. First of all, he was the October URC player of the month. So he was the best player in the URC for the month of October. And he's now, in the last 2 games, come off the bench and basically changed the game for the Stormers. I think he basically helped them win against the Bulls. And I thought his cameo this weekend was also very important to getting that draw against the Sharks. And I just think he ticks every single box you want in a Springbok fullback. I think he's creative. I think he's solid under the high ball. He's got very good skills. I think he reads the game very well. And he's very young. Not very young, but he's 26 years old. He's turning 27 this year. So, he's still got 4 or 5 years left in him. He's still got quite a long time ahead of him. It's not just like it's, what's the point of going Warrick Gelant because he's moving on. He's still got many years ahead of him. And I think we forget how young he is because he has been along for so long. He was playing for the Bulls, about 2015, I think it was. So, you're going back 7 years ago now. So he was playing from the age of 20. He was playing Super Rugby. And I think he made a South African debut in 2017 odd, so about 22 years old when he made a South African debut. The weirdest thing is that he does struggle with injuries, and he's only had, I think, 9 appearances for the Boks, which is criminally low for somebody of his talent. But what are we saying here? So Vic says, I think this is not a yes or no answer. I think it is wise to treat both Gelant and Fassi as the next Bok 15. Remember that Gelant is very injury prone, so you must have 2 main men at 15. Luke Law says, I think Fassi has huge potential, but Gelant is already the full package, seemingly. Fassi will have his turn. He's immensely talented. Did you see the tape to Jocko on Saturday? Yeah, I did. Devin is agreeing with Vic. Vic's then saying, what I do think is that Villeneuve must not be called up for the June and November tests. Bring Gelant, Fassi, and Green. If they don't do well in June, then bring Billy back for Rugby Championship. And Josh says, I don't think Fassi is defensively as good. Here is, I think if I were to select a Springbok side for 2 years' time, okay, post-World Cup, and I looked at my back three, I would be looking at Warrick Gelant at fullback, and I would probably be still looking at Ches and Colby at 14 because he'll be about 30, I think, in 2 years' time. So he's still technically got that that extra World Cup in him. And then I'll be looking at Fassi in the 11 jersey, to be perfectly honest. I think that we've got some good wings in this country, but I don't think too many wings are running the door down to be selected. Our best wing in the country is Makazole Mapimpi. That's what it is. I think Spur and Corsi will always be a squad member, but will he ever be able to shift Ches and Colby out? And I think that what we saw from Fassi in the number 11 jersey for the Springboks, it plays to all his strengths. He's got pace. He's got skills, so he can use it. You can still use it on the wing if you get enough ball. But it removes the defensive aspect to a certain degree. It doesn't have to do as much defending. And it removes the responsibility of creating, of game management, game creation. And now, look, lots can change in a few years. If you start playing a different system, you start playing a different type of fly half, or even a different type of inside center, for example, then there can be space for a different type of fullback. But personally, I think this is where the Springbok management are as well, Fassi in the current setup right now is an out-and-out replacement for Makazole Mapimpi. If you want him to score tries, he will score you tries. He's got the pace. He's got the skill set. So he can compete in the air if you put in a cross kick and stuff like that. So, I think you take a skill set and you can say, right, go do that on the wing and let the playmakers play at fullback, which is what we need. Look, now, obviously, I play Fassi. If he were to start developing that side of his game, he then creates a different conversation. He then pushes for that spot potentially. But if I'm picking a Springbok side right now, tomorrow, and I'm not including Willemse, the only option for me is Warrick because he's the perfect replacement. Warrick at the moment is playing like the Willemse of old. The Willemse for the Cheetahs, where he could change games like that. He could see space, he could read the game, he could create moments in the game. And that's what Warrick doing. He came on and simple, that try that Damian Willemse scored, which was a very nice finish as well. It was just the awareness, it was boom, drag the one in, just slide to the right to commit the other defender, put him away on the outside. And there were 3 or 4 moments where, again, he just has that understanding. He just knows where the players are and what the game is doing. So he put in a very intelligent kick where he finds some space and stuff like that. He always manages to find an offload when he goes into contact. He's always looking for that offload. And I think that's quite an important part of his game because he always looks to keep the he always looks to keep the ball alive, which I think is quite an important thing in the modern game. And I think a lot of people now are sort of saying that they agree that Gelant needs to be the 15. As David says, Gelant should start at 15. He's already been part of the BOK setup, including Rugby World Cup 19, though White Dobson has him on the bench. Well, he will not be benching this weekend. They have confirmed that he will be starting this weekend. So we get to see 18 minutes of Warrick Gelant. And what I also would say is some people are sitting there saying you can't judge him after 2 games. And if you're saying that, you clearly didn't watch last year. Because Gelant's been playing like this the entire season. Vic says Fassi is for more open games and Gelant is for more tight games. The same way we use Pollard and Alta for different strategies. That's how the box should utilize Fassi and Gelant. I get what you're saying, and I definitely think that Fassi would thrive in an open environment, but I also think that Gelant would do just as well. I think if there is space, he finds it. He's just an incredibly creative rugby player. I think the combination, I think what we saw with him and Damian Willemse on the weekend, some people are sitting there going, hey, actually, that could actually almost work. I would love, just for fun, to be able to see a Damian Willemse at 12, Warrick Gelant 13 combination. Not necessarily long term, but just have it go, because I think those two complement each other very nicely. They're exciting players. They've got a good step on them. They've both got good boots on them. It's a left-right kicking combination as well. And they seem to have a very good understanding of each other. So I think that could be quite a fun combination to watch. Because at the end of the day, John Dobson has to find a way to start Damian Willemse and Warrick Gelant because they are both too talented to be on the bench. And I understand that, and I'm the first person to sit there saying that it's not always your starting 15 who are the best players. But I think when it comes to provincial level, for example, and franchise level, we don't necessarily have the same depth. You need your playmakers and your best players playing as long as possible. I think at international level, when you get to the Springboks, the level between Malcolm Marx and Bongi Manambi is not that much difference. And we're talking about Malcolm Marx as probably the best hooker in the world right now. So there isn't always that huge step up or step down at international level. So you can afford to say, right, Stephen Kitsoff, you coming off the bench because Oxenchair will do as good a job for that 40 minutes. When it comes to provincial, you don't have that depth. How can you? You're not an international side. So there will probably be a step down in quality if you do substitute Warrick Gelant for, let's just say a Sergio Peterson, for example. And I think Sergio Peterson's a good player, but there is that step down in quality, which you'll inevitably have it at provincial level. So, Gelant needs to be starting if the Stormers want to be putting on good performances because they've been a different side when he plays. And, if they want to stop chasing games, give themselves the best chance of being able to get a lead and try and keep it, Warrick Gelant gives you that. He's got the creativity that he can bring from the get-go. Vic says, I'm thinking that Willemse should try playing at 13. Luke Law says, I'd love to see Willemse at 12. I'm 13, Gelant 15, maybe Fassi Green at 11, and Colby at 14. 10 is a concern. Yeah, exactly. So, you're naming exciting players there. I think a lot of people last year, when they saw a couple of cameos of Damian Willemse at 12, suddenly sat up and said, yeah, listen, that looks like the position for him. Because under the high ball, he struggled a little bit when he played 15. His positional play was a little bit off. I have reservations about his kicking game at 10, but he's incredibly solid defensively. that's one thing you can't say Damian Willemse can't tackle. He's a very good defender. He's got a lethal foot step, and he can distribute better than your average inside center. So I do understand why there was quite a lot of excitement over that, because I do think that's an interesting way to go about it, to play Damian Willemse at 12. The other option is, as a lot of people are mentioning, Tyrone Green is going to be an international rugby player. The question is he going to play for the Springboks or is he going to play for England? Now, I would be very gutted to see him not play for the Springboks. And he wants to play for the Springboks because that was the thing. When he went over to Harlequins, he had a conversation with Rassie Erasmus and he said, will this impact me playing for the Springboks? And was basically told, no, it won't. If you want to go overseas and play for the Harlequins, you're playing a top level rugby. You can still definitely make the Springboks if you're playing in a Premiership side. And he's gone over to the Premiership and he's just making mincemeat out of it. Him and Andre Esthuizen have been probably the two, him and Marcus Smith, have been very good for the Harlequins in that back line. And I think Tyrone Green, not necessarily the same sort of type of player, but he's got a good pace. He's quite physical for his size. Not the biggest chap, but he's a very physical. He's a bit like a terrier sort of type thing. When he hits you, you feel it and you'll stay hit. But I think that he's somebody as well who we need to get into the setup sooner rather than later. The biggest problem is I think that they identified Damian Willemse as the France Stain bomb squad split 6-2 split replacement early on, and I do think that's hindered his development. I do think that Damian Willemse, had he been left to be sort of settled in a position, would be a better player than he currently is. He made his debut, I think, at like 19 or 20 years old for the Springboks. Very, very young. He's still very young, so I don't like when people say David Willemse is overrated. He's not overrated. He's got all the talent in the world. He's one of the most talented players I think we've ever seen play. In terms of just raw talent. He was part of the South African squad in 2018, which was 4 years ago, and he's 23. This is what I'm saying. So we just need to find, how do we unlock Damian Willemse, and then we need to, and that's what the Stormers need to be doing. And what I don't understand is, if we're being brutally honest, I'm finding the Stormers centres to be very, very below average at the moment. I think Dan du Plessis and Rick Pretorius, both the past weekends, have been very uninspiring. I think Ruan Nalda struggled to get in. So when you think that the Stormers have Damian Willemse, Warrick Gelant, Tim Sweel, Cade Volater, for example, Sergio Peterson, Severo Sonatla, Angelo Davids, they've got so many outside backs. I struggle to understand why they're not trying Damian Willemse at 12 or trying Warrick Gelant at 13, and letting more of their better players play. At the end of the day, it's all about how can we get our best players onto the field at the same time. So Mani Liebach, for example, I thought played pretty poorly this weekend, but I thought he was very good the weekend before. If you had a Mani Liebach 10, even Dan du Plessis 12, Warrick Gelant 13, or Damian Willemse 12, and a Ruan Nalda 13, you got John de Jong coming back as well, and a Warrick Gelant or Damian Willemse at full back, I think there's a lot of creativity in it, and I think that John Dobson's sides generally do try to play a nice brand of rugby. They generally do like to throw the ball around. It's it's when they play well, they're very attractive team to watch. They're like the Lions. When it comes off, they're very attractive to watch. In fact, I think a lot of our teams are trying to play more positive rugby. Even the Bulls are playing a lot more positive. I think on the weekend we saw more of the Bulls brute force. But over the last 18 months, I think it would be very harsh to say that the Bulls are playing the same rugby they were playing back in 2009, 2010. It's not the same rugby. They do have a bit more to use. Leandro Baez said, I was low-key upset when they used du Plessis in the 12 after the injury. Was such a good opportunity to see Gelant 15 and Willemse at 12. Hope that's the selection this weekend. Yeah, well, we have to wait and see. Esthuizen must come back for 12. The problem is that he's a specialist and there's no way you're going to remove Delenda from a spot. I agree, definitely can't ignore Esthuizen. Yeah, I did a video about it earlier this year and then got told that I'm being stupid because Esthuizen can play on the wing and Esthuizen can play at fullback. He doesn't. Maybe he can, maybe he can't, but he doesn't. It's not like Esthuizen has had a game on the wing in the last 2-3 years. So as I said, I think we all are very aware that Damon Delende and Andre Esthuizen are very specialist inside centers. Maybe they can shift to other positions if we really need them to, but they're not shifting to other positions as easily as other players can. certain players can move around very quite successfully. Some players are very much, this is what I do, and that's fine. There's no issue with this is what I do. But I do think if you're picking Andre Esterhuizen and you're picking Damian de Linde, you are picking two inside centers. As opposed to picking a Frans Steyn, you can play inside center and fullback and fly half if you need to. Or picking Damian Willemse, you can go 10, 12, 15. Picking a Warrick Gelant, you can probably go 15, 13. Picking even like Kanya I think can plays on the wing as well as plays at outside centre. He's far more influential at outside centre, and that's why you want him there. But he could play there if he wanted to. David says the BOK jersey is kryptonite to Willemse. He has had opportunities and blown them. I think we haven't seen the best of Damian Willemse at national level, but again, he's 24 this year, so I think there's so much more of Damian Willemse's career coming up that I think that we can definitely find a spot for him. But I think that he needs to focus on a role and start playing more often. I do think that we have in many ways ruined Damian Willemse by saying that he's so talented, he can do so many things that he hasn't been allowed to develop into a position. And I think that's quite important because I think that all players, especially the best players, usually come through. When they come through, they're playing a specific position. And maybe later on in their careers, they suddenly add a couple of other strings to their bow. Frans Steyn very much 12 when he first came through at the Springboks, and then sort of moved to 15 when he went overseas. Whereas Damian Willemse, since he was 20 years old, has been told he's utility back. And I think we've seen far too many careers ruined. I think Pat Lambie was at risk of that, when he was being moved around too much. I think Curran Bosch has been lost by that. I generally think that Curran Bosch, because of sort of split between 10-15, 10-15, that's what has hampered his development. Jan Goosen took a while to sort of really come good because he was also somebody who was moved around a lot. There are lots of examples of players who get moved around, don't get to settle and get to just play a season in the same jersey week in, week out, and just honing your skills there before then being moved around. I think that's what we've done with Damian Willemse. We've just, because he's got so many things that he could do, he hasn't been allowed to focus on what he's really good at and be able to get comfortable into himself and say, right, I am one of the best inside centers in this country, and I can also play fullback if you need me to. At the moment, it's like, I am the best utility back. Now, the problem with the best utility back is it means that there are centers that are better than you. It means that there are wings that are better than you. It means that there are fly halves that are better than you. It means that there are fullbacks that are better than you. And there's no position. And if there's no position where you are not within the top 4 best players in the country, do we need you as utility back? Because we could then pick more specialist players. And I think that's a stark reality. When Frans Steyn's playing inside centre, you sit there and say, right, it's probably, within the top 4 best inside centres, but definitely probably top 5 best inside centres of the country. When he's playing a fullback like he did for the things, you're sitting thinking, he's probably, top 3 best fullbacks. So that's where you want to be. But, for fly halves, I don't think Damian Willemse gets in the top 5, top 6. Inside centres, we haven't really seen it yet, so we couldn't possibly say he's within the top 5 best inside centres. And fullbacks as well. You're not going to sit there and say that he's better than Villaroo at fullback because you don't know. Is he better than Frans Steyn at fullback? Probably not just yet. Is he better than Warrick Gelant? No. Better than Villaroo? Well, sure, he's out in that one. Better than I played Fassi? Most people will say no. Better than Tyron Green? Most people probably say no as well. So it's important, I think, for Willemse to just put him somewhere and let him play there, even if it's 6 months. The Stormers really want to get the best out of Damian Willemse. Stick him where you want him and play him there. Commit to him being there and let him thrive because he can thrive. He's got everything he needs to thrive. He just needs to bring that consistency. Vic says the problem with Willemse is he's too versatile, jack of all trades, and master of none. Exactly. Remove Creel from the box squad and give the jersey to Esterhuizen or Willemse. Well, Willemse is already there, so I suppose I think that jersey goes to Warrick Gelant. David Best says Fassi played 12 at school, 15 for the Sharks, and 1 shot for the Boks 11. Do you remember that one chance he killed? Did you actually play 2 games at 11 for the Boks? And he got 2 tries in both of them. So that's why I think right now he's an out and out 11 for the Boks in their view. I don't think we'll ever see Fassi at 10 centre. Very much an outside back these days. And I also think there's a certain amount of merit of player season on the wing, and we can shift into fullback as you sort of develop as well. There's nothing wrong with that. We've seen players move positions throughout their career. Look at somebody like Kwaka Smith, for example, who now can play anywhere in the loose trio. He can play on either ends of the flank, and he can play at eighth man. And he brings this different skill set and redefines his role within that each time. So, Alice says, hi, I hope you're well. Siba says, Fassi definitely better than Ty and Green. That's why he's capped as Springbok. Yeah, he had a better season, but I think that during that Super Rugby season, Fassi was absolutely the drop. But I think you'd be naive to look at the problem is as well is that Upper Fassi has played about 200 minutes of rugby in the past 6 months, maybe. And Tyron Green has played every single minute of the Premiership season so far. So it's difficult to argue that someone is on better form than someone who's played every single minute of a Premiership season so far and been one of the best performers compared to someone who's only just sort of getting back to it. And as I said, I don't think it needs to always be. I mean, why can't we have Fassi, Green, Gelant, Colby all in the same squad? Isn't that the whole point of having your best players? Because if we look at who are the other outside backs that are pushing for Springbok selection? Which other outside backs right now do you think would make the Springbok squad? It's been Corsi, of course, although I thought he played pretty poorly on Saturday. Vic says McLaren should be considered as a future BOK 11 for me after Mapimpi. Yeah, he's an out-and-out finisher. It's the South African conundrum, because if you want to pick a finisher, you can go to every union and they've got somebody who's unbelievably fast, unbelievably good at finishing. Stormers have got Sebele Sinatla. Lions have got McLaren. The Sharks have obviously got Mapimpi. The Bulls have got Madash Tambwe at the moment. But the age-old thing has always been finding that number 11 that can also defend. Finding that number 11 that has more than just pace and finishing. Brian Habana was an incredible try scorer. He could also tackle. And he could also, his game reading was pretty decent as well. Makazole Mapimpi had to improve. He wasn't good enough as just an out-and-out finisher when he first came through. The reason Makazole Mapimpi has reached the heights he's reached is because he became very good in the air and because he suddenly became very good defensively. Because he already had the pace. He had the pace in the finishing. That was never an issue for Mapimpi. But when you start adding those extra things, that's what makes you world-class. And New Zealand have actually often had that issue where they've had so many players who come through, and that's why you look at how many sensations that New Zealand come in where they're incredible for one season and they get moved on, incredible for one season, get moved on, and not all of them sort of make it because sometimes you just don't have enough in your game to justify continuing playing. Lawson says, Tyron Green to put in good performances week in, week out against quality opposition makes him a very appealing prospect. Well, that's the thing. He's playing in what is arguably these days at least the second best league in the world after probably top 14. Top 14 in Premiership are sort of battling for the two top leagues in the world. That's the reality. And it's no mistake where the money is, the two best leagues are. So he's playing in what is at least the second best league in the world for the current Premiership champions, and he's one of their best players. So you're sitting there going, right, well, we've got a fullback who's playing for the best team in England, which is arguably the best league in the world, and one of their best performers. Surely that should be Springbok quality, and I think it is. And that's why it's going to be a nice fight. You want to see that. Is it Gelant? Is it Green? Is it Fassi? Who are we going with? Where are we going here? You want to have that fight. You want to have that options, You want players. You want to be sitting there going, I can't believe he got picked. But then the next player saying, but look at the options we've got. We want that embarrassment of riches. Damian Best says the BOK game plan requires a playmaker at 15. The All Blacks copied that from the box. Who's the better playmaker? Gelant, Willemse, Fassi, or Green? Gelant's the best playmaker for me. It's just his game awareness is ludicrous. I don't understand how he understands where the game is and where he should go all the time. He just always seems to know where everybody is. Gelant is definitely the better playmaker, followed very closely by Green. And I can understand why they were thinking of Willemse in that role, because he's a fly half by trade. So he, in theory, has that playmaking ability. In theory, he has the kicking. But he hasn't really managed to take that next step up completely so far in a Springbok jersey. Vic says, do you think Philly will make it to the next World Cup? Yeah, he's definitely going to be there. As much as people don't like him there, whether he'll start, who knows? I definitely think he's part of the squad. I think he's too important within the squad to leave out for the World Cup. He might not be the starting fullback, but I think he's definitely a squad member. I'm not sure Gelant is consistent enough. Well, I mean, he was the best player in the URC for in October. He's been brilliant this year, so I count that 7, 8 games in a row where he's been one of the best players in the field. So I think consistency wise, I think he's getting there. I also thought he was looking very good at before he got the injury. In fact, I remember when he got the injury, it was just like, why? Because we were seeing the Gelant that we all wanted to take over from Villaroo, and then he did get that injury. Jamarcus says Fassi isn't a 15. Well, I mean, he's played most of his rugby at 15 at professional level, but I think Fassi for me is an international 11, can play franchise 15, especially like the Sharks who love an open game plan. Speaking of an open game plan, to wrap this conversation up, have we seen the teams for this week? Because there are a lot of players coming back this week and tomorrow, and I'm very excited for that. Roscoe Speckman is back for the Cheetahs tomorrow. Who else is back? Kate Volata is back for Western Province tomorrow. Rudolph Smith is on trial for Western Province tomorrow. Hilton Roberts, the former Springbok lock, is on the bench for the Western Province tomorrow. But for me, the most exciting one, Seiko Mozenoche tomorrow, is back and starting for the Sharks. Somebody who's sort of fallen to the wayside that we kind of forgot about the entire time when Dwayne Vermeulen was injured. It was Jasper Wiese our next number 8. And then he didn't always impress. And then suddenly it was like, right, Evan Ruiz, he's our next number 8. Albert Lowe, he's our next number 8. Some people were saying, Percy Buthelezi looking very good to be our next number 8. Some people then saying, Kwaka Smith did the job at the end of the year, so maybe he's our next number 8. I think somebody who still has a lot to say about it is Seiko Mozenoche, because when he's playing at his best, he is definitely one of the best 8s in the country. Again, 28 years old, he's still got time on his side, and he's a very interesting number 8. I was sort of likening him to a Warren Whiteley type vibe, because he's not necessarily your bulldozing number 8. He's far more pacey, got a good skill set, but he's also 1.86 and 101 kgs. So he still does pack a punch, but he's a very, very good athlete. He's very athletic in the way he plays. And he's a Springbok. He's played 6 games for the Springboks anyway. So I think he, for me, is the big one to watch out tomorrow in that Sharks Western Province game. I really hope that he hits the ground running, because I think that a loose trio of a Sia Khaleesi, whoever really at 7, if you want to go John Lavaskakni is currently there, you want to go Henko Venter, Seiko Mozenoche, and then Seiko Mozenoche at 8 with Percy Buthelezi coming off the bench. I think it's quite exciting. Or you could try and fill in, put Dylan Richardson there as well. But I'm a big Seiko Mozenoche fan. I was really hoping the Lions were going to pick him up, because I thought he would really suit the Lions' game plan. But Cape Volta as well is an interesting one, because I think that if we're being very honest, we are in a little bit of a 10 crisis at the moment, because we've got Andre Pollard, we've got Alton Yankees as our 2 10s. Ornstein is now retired. There are no fly halves who are really going, you got to pick me here. I am the next fly half. Those guys go down, I'm there. I don't think there's a single fly half right now who's really pushing for that Springbok jersey. There's far too much inconsistency. And we can bring up Johan Goosen. And Johan Goosen played really well for 7 weeks and then got injured again. And he's out for months and months and months and months. So I will never, ever put my faith long-term in Johan Goosen, because he just doesn't have the game time to back up that claim, because he just is always injured. So I'm keen to see how Cape Volta comes out through tomorrow. Obviously, the Lions need to get Jordan Henderson back again, who's another prospect. But I'd like to see more out of Chris Smith. I want to see more out of Buddha Chamberlain. I want to see more out of Marnie Liebach. These players need to step up and start, taking the next step, because they're far too inconsistent. Buddha Chamberlain last year was a favour of the month, and this weekend I thought he was terrible. Marnie Liebach last weekend was favour of the month, and I thought this week he was pretty terrible. Chris Smith has also got that issue where he hasn't been able to bring that consistency all the time in his game. Devin says maybe change the plan altogether, teach Delinde how to pass and play off 13, interchange the playmaker role between Amman 13 and Gelant 15, floating in the 13 channel. We could, but look, Damian Delinde has added a bit of an offload game to him in his defense. He's far better than he was 5-6 years ago. But I'd be very surprised if we were to sort of really change things and to make sure that 13 was where a lot of our creativity was coming from. I mean, I wouldn't mind it because you've got the Kanya and as I said, you could then have Warrick Gelant filling in there. But I'd be very surprised if we were to do that. Luke Law says, I remember Noche being absolutely unstoppable in 2019 Super Rugby. I think it was if he finds that form, that eighth man jersey for the Boxers in hot debate. No, literally, I mean, he was next level. You know, he moved to the Sharks for 2020, and I think he was a massive loss to the Stormers. But I was so excited. I thought that here we go. This is what we're going to see. I think the Sharks are going to suit him. So I'm hoping that we start seeing the Suki Noche evolve because when he plays well, he is a terrific player because he's got the athleticism and he's got a skill set. You know, he played sevens. He's got everything in his locker. He now needs to play for 6 months and get back to that form. Ironically, you know, I think Evan Lewis, who everyone was sitting there saying, how is this guy not starting for the Springboks? I thought that he struggled a little bit in the early stages of the URC. I don't think we've seen the Evan Lewis that we saw during the Currie Cup, which is not to say that he won't get that form, but I mean, you do start to wonder how much was it the opposition he was playing where he could bulldoze over people, where he was breaking tackles far more easily, and now he's finding it a lot tougher to get through that contact. And as a result, he's not looking as effective, and now he's sort of trying to find a way and push through and break through the next sort of level, really, you know, and be able to put those performances he was putting in at this level, you know, against the best players, some of the best players in the world. I think Albert Lowe is somebody who's starting to do that. I think he's starting every week. You sit there looking and you're thinking that's probably the best player in the loose trio, which includes Arno Botha and Marcel Coetzee. So the number 8 debate's very interesting. Pepsi Buthelezzi's also sort of dropped off a little bit. I thought he played very well in the early stage of the URC. We haven't quite seen that the last couple of games. Somebody who's going on quite silently. I think Franco Horn's got a lot of potential at the Lions. I think he needs to sort out a bit of discipline. But I think that it will help when the Lions themselves start playing better. But I think he's an interesting one to follow as well because he's also kind of that new age eighth man where we suddenly got these very big but very mobile loose forwards. I mean, eighth men who are quite quick actually and quite sort of get around the park quite a lot. It is interesting to see how many players we see in new generation. The differences we're seeing in the type of players. You look at the fly halves coming through. Jordan Hendrickse, Kay Volta, Ngoma Zulu at Stormers as well. I mean, as well. It's a very different type of. It's exciting. It's exciting fly halves. There's fly halves who love to play with the ball. You know, I think that people are now growing up and watching the likes of a Finn Russell, and the likes of a Richie Mwanga and a Bowden Barrett and stuff like that, and they're wanting to be that kind of player. Whereas I don't think too many sort of flower halves were sort of necessarily growing up saying, I want to be the 100 Polo crash ball up and under, you know, inside center / flower half thing. And that's not to say that doesn't work because we know it works at the Springbok level. But you always want to do the glamorous stuff, don't you? And that's why I think even around the world, I think we're seeing a new generation of flower half being born. We're seeing a Marcus Smith. We're seeing the Romain Intermax. We're seeing the Mathieu Jalabers. We are seeing really exciting young flower halves who are very enterprising, very creative, and have very good skill sets. We're now waiting for our generation to come through. You know, we're waiting to find our Marcus Smith. Who's our Romain Intermac? Is it Kay Volta? Is it Jordan Hendrickse? You know, who is it, and when do we start seeing it? So in many ways, I think Alton Jankers was ahead of his time because I think that, you know, a lot of he plays like a lot more flower halves are starting to play coming through. You know, kicks in behind, cross kicks, license to try and be a bit more creative and stuff like that. Alton Yankees was playing during the times of Morné Steyn and Peter Grant. Pat Lambie was a bit more creative, but he himself was also, you know, quite a traditional flower with a very good kicking game. So I'm keen to see the next generation and what they bring. And I think we've seen that in a lot of positions. You know, we're now seeing props who can handle the ball well. We're seeing locks who are a bit more mobile. We're seeing loose forwards who can double as backline players. We're seeing a very different type of rugby player than what we did maybe 10 years ago. And the more professional the game it goes, the quicker it gets, the more physical it gets. You know, there are certain players who are just tremendous athletes. You know, they're big, they're strong, they're heavy, but they're still quick, they're still fit. You know, they still get around the park, and it's quite a frightening prospect. When you think that, take something like Evan Lewis. You know, look at the size of him, but then look how quick he is. And, you know, I mean, it's like a new breed of player. What happened to Troki? Troki is playing over in the Premiership. He is playing for Oh, I know who it is. 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 I can even see their flipping kit. Um, Premiership. Saints, Northampton Saints. So he scored a try the other day actually, or in his first couple of games, stuff like that. He's an eighth man, and I think a lot of people have now forgotten. But if he plays well in the Premiership, could suddenly be right back on the radar. Good evening, Aiden. Hope you are well. I think that Jasper Wiese missed an opportunity because I think that he had the opportunity last year to really put himself in the frame as the next eighth man. And bar the one man of the match performance, I think we saw somebody who was close but no cigar. So I think we saw somebody who's a very good ball carrier, but his discipline is an issue. And if he doesn't fix that discipline, you can't be an international rugby player. Because if you can see the yellow card, routinely, or penalties in important stages, you just become a liability. So I think that the big positions that are up for grabs is who's our next fly half, who's our next fullback, who's our next eighth man. I think those are the big sort of questions. I think one position which I think we're going to be fine in is scrum half, because I think Herschel Yankees is looking good again. Grant Williams is playing very nicely. I think we've got Jaden Hendrickse. I think Ambrose Papier is looking very good. I think Zach Berger is a nice player as well. You've got Morning van den Berg, who I think is very talented at the Lions. So I think that scrum half is a position that we are quite fine with. I think with the type of depth that we've got at scrum half, I'm not quite happy with the depth we've got at scrum half. The complete opposite when it comes to fly half. Ed says, one thing I'm surprised to see is that teams aren't using the 50-22 rule more often. I think some teams are using it and some teams aren't. I saw a couple of very nice use examples of it. I think we're starting to see it. We'll start seeing it more and more as we go. I think it's about learning how to use it, when to use it, and if to use it. I mean, obviously, of course, you always want to try and use it, but you don't just want to give possession away. So I think we'll start to see, again, that'll also, rule changes take a while before you start getting players who can really take advantage of it. And sometimes rule changes will even create a better player, because they might, like a France was saying, with a boot like that, he was made for the 50-22. So a peak France stay back in 2012, 2011 would be milking a 50-22 every day of the week. Visa discipline gives me anxiety, even in the Prem. The dude's a liability. I think he had a hearing the other day for getting so many yellow cards this season. We can't have that at international level. We all watched the Blade Duplessis, who were wonderful players, but goodness me, they're just a walking penalty and a walking card. Who'll be the next third hooker? That's still open. Yeah, I think Joseph Dreba as well. He had a couple of good performances, but we didn't see the beast. We didn't see the Joseph Dweba we remember that when he left. We didn't see the physical specimen, and I think that it doesn't help that he's not always starting at Bordeaux. I'd love to see him back in the country, and I think the Lions are so stupid to not be trying to get him back. And if he wants to have further Springbok ambitions, I think he'd be far better off coming and playing in South Africa under the nose of the Springbok squad, playing against the other options. I think Jan Krobelaar is our best option after the current two at the moment, to be honest. However, after that, we are looking a little bit thin. I think Joseph Dweba and Jan Krobelaar can battle that out between those two. I don't think there's much between them. I think Krobelaar is probably the better all-round player. I think that Dweba is probably the better. I think in many ways he's more special. I think he's got that little bit more. I think he's a bit more physical. I think he's got that size. Whereas I think Johan Krobelaar just does everything so consistently. He throws the lineup very well. He makes so many tackles. He'll carry the ball up all the time. But he doesn't necessarily have that X factor, which for a forward can be like the physicality. Like Bongi Manambi, when he gets on a run, you don't want to stop him. And his lineup work is superb. Malcolm Marx is a physical freak, phenomenal over the ball. He can pass the ball if he needs to, but he's also quite quick around the park and very mobile. So I think that those two are fine. But after that, where are we looking? We're looking Fez and Barter, who now is barely getting to the Shark side, Kieran from Furin, Scarrett Benny, Andre Hugo Fent is very young at the Stormers. The Lions hookers are a joke. Sharks, then I've got the likes of Skalka, Rasmus, Joe, and Zale. So it's not great in terms of the vast amount of, as I said, you look at scrum halves, and there's far more scrum halves out there than there are hookers, for example. And then you've got 4 very good hookers, and after that, I think there's a bit of a step down. Everyone Smith says, why do you not want Fassi at 15 for the box? He's playing so well at the moment in consistency. Well, scroll back to the beginning of the video and you can hear the entire debate. We agreed on Apple Fassi should be part of the box squad. He's built at the moment to be a very good wing, but nobody right now is getting ahead of Warrick for the 15 spot. That's what we had decided. Aaron says, Just Ray was a solid player. He is a solid player, but he was a special player at the Cheetahs. He was special. He was. You can't look past me. He was. I'm here in your face type of good. And I don't think we managed to. He got to express as much of that. I don't think he ever let us down when he played for the box. I thought that he made tackles. I thought he had some very good games, but I wouldn't say he blew the door down. Certain players when they get opportunities, they just break the door down, like Fassi did with 2 tries in 2 games. And suddenly everybody's going, "Why is he playing? Why is he playing? Why is he playing?" Whereas I don't think when Bongi Manami and Malcolm Marx were playing, people were sitting there saying, "When's Derby going to get a chance?" It does help that Bongi Manami and Malcolm Marx are probably the best 2 hooker combination in the world. But Damian says Akka must come back. Yeah, I don't know what it is about that Springbok setup. I think there's something going on there with Akka. There's always supposed to be politics and stuff like that. With why he's not involved, but unfortunately, I don't think we'll really see him, which is sad because he's a very good player, very aggressive, very good ball carrier. I mean, I was a Lions fan, so I used to watch Malcolm Marx depart in the 65th minute and watch Akka van der Merwe run over people for 15 minutes. It's good fun. Those are the days. Now I've got PJ Burcher. I wonder why teams are not abusing the held-up goal line kick rule. Why can't the defending team just always drag the counter attack in the try zone and hold up the ball like they did with Sia last week? Hey, I suppose it's a high-risk, high-reward. If you drag somebody and you drop them, they're over the try line. So you could try it. And in theory, if it works, it'll work. But yeah, you don't want to be that guy that concedes a try when they say, "What are you doing?" You're saying, "No, I was trying to get a dropout." But again, that's another rule change. It'll be interesting to see how people will adapt to it. For example, we're seeing how Peter Chamberlain right now is abusing that goal line dropout with his drop goals, which is kind of making up for the fact that he can't kick the goal, or couldn't this weekend. But yeah, I mean that's another example of rule changes which might produce different types of players and tactics. I remember watching Malcolm Marx at Cairns in high school, and even then he was a beast. He's just a physical freak. He's so big, but yet still quite quick. Still has all the basics and stuff. Do you think that the Dupree brothers are totally out of the box setup now? Yeah, for whatever reason, I just don't think that it just hasn't worked for them. I don't know if it's a case of they don't train well. There's an internal rift. But for whatever reason, they just don't seem to quite be there. So, look, we've got loose forwards coming out of our everything, basically, at the moment. I mean, you look at the loose forwards in the country, and I think there are a lot of potential box out there. I think that you're looking at Albert Lowe. There's Marcel Garcia go back up there. In the future, I think basically Lazy could be there. Sikambozi Noche is back on the scene. The Stormers, you've got a Evan Ruiz. You still got like a Joanna Augustus overseas. We've got a Vincent Tuka at the Lions. There are so many good loose forwards in the country. If Jaco Creel starts playing like Jaco Creel, then suddenly is he back on the radar. That I don't think will struggle too much if the Dupree brothers don't work out. But I'd rather have them, if they're not going to play, and they're there to just carry tackle-backs, I'd rather have somebody else, to be honest. If there's some reason that they will not play or whatever, then I'd rather them just not be there. Louis says, Jan Hendrik Vessels. Well, the problem is Jan Hendrik Vessels needs to decide what position he's playing, which seems to be hooker because he can't scrum. Look, that man will make a professional rugby career one way or another because Jake is absolutely obsessed with making sure it happens. I think he's a very interesting player because I think that he's got all the physical characteristics, but I don't think he's managed to translate that yet. His scrummaging wasn't even particularly good at under 20 level, so I don't think he's ever going to make it as a prop. So I'll be interested to see if he makes it as a hooker, but he needs to start playing at hooker. He needs to start making him the balls and stuff like that first. Yeah. What do you think of Duplessis? Who's your 6 there? Low 7 and 8 worse. Look, Albert Lowe is a very good 7. I'm not quite sure who you're going with at 6 there. Yeah, I think Ulrich Loeb is becoming a very attractive prospect for the Springboks because of his versatility. And I think Jake White's been quite clever because he's played in the 6th jersey, he's played in the 7th jersey, he's played in the 8th jersey, and Jake White's swapping him a lot. And I think he's priming him for the Springboks because to be able to do that is huge. That's the versatility that Kwaka Smith brings you, and that's what makes him so valuable to the Springboks. If you're going Pepsi at 6, I'm not sure about Pepsi. I think Pepsi's an out and out 8th man, to be honest. Maybe you can play on the flank as well. But yeah, as I said, I think it's weird how you suddenly it just comes in. Look, I think Pepsi Boutle is a wonderful player. We just never really seen him play on the flank, I suppose, is my only sort of worry. So if he does play on the flank, he can play as well, then yeah, sure, hell, why not? I'm more on the track of Luke Lawson with Imagine Low 6, Tuka 7, and Ruiz 8. Who said? Vincent Tuka was told to go get a South African passport by the Springbok management, and somebody on Facebook the other day said that he's probably about 5th or 6th choice in line in the country. And I couldn't actually believe how many people were sitting there saying, "Why?" Do you know how many people were sitting there saying, "Why do we need him to get a passport? We don't need him." Like, have you not watched this guy single-handedly carry the Lions for the last 2-3 seasons? Like him, Lewis, Lowe, Pepsi to a certain degree. Pepsi's not bulked up, so yeah. But those guys are like next level in terms of, they're big, they've got skill sets, they're physical. Like those guys are all international quality players. And they're all stupidly young. Vincent Tuka, maybe 20. I think he's actually like 2 years younger than me, He's 24 this year. Ulrich Lowe is 23, 22, 23 this year. And Evan Ruiz is 23 22. He's just turned 22. So those guys are all within 2 years of each other. And I think that's the future. And then Pepsi Boutle, obviously. But people like Namakaba, if he were to get an extended run and stuff like that, I think that he's somebody who could potentially become quite a good player. And then Pepsi 23 this year. So yeah, look, we've always had so much depth at bloody flank. Matrix says we need Curran Bosch at fullback. If you're talking about the box, then he needs to kind of make it at the Sharks first, and then he can come up. France stands our best 15. Albert Lowe is better than Jasper. Yeah, I would have him ahead of Jasper Visa. I wasn't particularly impressed with Jasper Visa. I think he had a couple of good games. But it's not even just his discipline. I just felt like he didn't have the soft skills, Like, it's just weird things, handling and passing and game awareness. I just didn't feel like he had the soft skills for international rugby. Under the high ball and stuff like that. He kind of came across as a player who, as soon as you have to give him the ball and then ask him to run over people. And surely we need something more than that. Stuka didn't do a very good job by carrying the Lions. Harsh. We had one bad Super Rugby season. Really bad Super Rugby season, granted. But also remember that in the last 2 years, the Lions have lost, I think it's about 34 players. Also beat the Stormers last year, though. Come on. Hey, we were first in the URC come Christmas, just by the way, in the South African conference. Leave my boys out of this. I would to go to but he starts at any union. He does start at any union. I would start him if you had the Bulls. If you had Master Coetzee, Vincent Tuka, and Ulrich Lowe as your loose trio, that's childish. That is genuinely childish. Apparently, Harlequins won Tuka, and I'll cry if that happens. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if it happens either, because first of all, it's obviously the money thing. Second of all, the Lions are shit. Third of all, one of his best mates is Tyron Green. So those two would just tear it up Harlequins together. Warrick Gelant being linked to racing, him and Finn Russell on the same team should be legal, but that could happen. Clint DeVos says this year's Six Nations Championship Rugby will be a good yardstick to measure where the Boks are as compared to other top nations tier before 2023 World Cup. I'm looking forward to this year's Six Nations. I'm not sure how we're going to be able to do the watch alongs, because we've got a watch along starting at 3. We've got URC 3, and then we've got Six Nations at 4, and then URC at 5, and then Six Nations at 6. So we're probably going to actually have streams at the same time, which you can then kind of jump in between. It's not ideal though, but we will obviously be covering the Six Nations. I'll be doing previews and stuff like that on Thursday, and we'll do reviews and stuff like that. What is your SAA lineup? New Zealand has a young team. Yeah, they do. Really should be a near squad, not one line. Should be a BOK at the moment. Again, harsh because I think Carly Sardi is the best. Name right now in the last 2 weeks a better tight head. I'm sorry. I'm going to take exception with this comment, Henna, and I'll come to the other ones here. Chatuka had one okay season, and all of a sudden he's in the same sentence as Low Ruiz. You didn't even know who Evan Ruiz and Albert Lowe were before the pandemic started. If you're talking about one season wonders, Evan Ruiz didn't even play for the Sharks. He's basically been playing for 6 months at this level. Albert Lowe started playing for the Bulls at the end of 2020. So he's had, 18 months of rugby. But how dare Vincent Tuka, who's been playing Super Rugby since he was 19, had one okay season and is with the likes of them. They're with the likes of him. Vincent's been playing at this level far longer than they have. Vincent Tuka was named in that Springbok Gold versus Springbok Green game. Those two weren't because they weren't in the radar. Come now. He made his Lions debut in 2018. He played Currie Cup in 2018 at the age of 19 and then played a full Super Rugby season at 20. He's been playing far longer than there. Please, man. Just a minute. I mean, come on. We've had lots of people here. If you don't think Vincent Tuka is a good rugby player, you just haven't been watching rugby, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I think he's got like 5 man of the match season. I'm just going to call you a troll for that. SAL lineup. We'll try and do that at the end, maybe. Who will win the Six Nations this year, Steve? My money's on Italy. It's France or England for me. Jan Hendrik Wessel must become a good loose forward. The front row is too technical for his weird sides. Interesting idea. Who do you think will win, Bulls or Cheetahs? On paper, I think the Bulls side's very good, but I don't know. The Cheetahs are a weird side. They can do stuff when they want to. Did more in 18 months than Stuka in 3 years. Evan Lewis wasn't even playing 18 months. That doesn't make sense. Who is better now, Burden Barrett or Pollard? Oh, well, I mean, current form, but Burden Barrett was much better last year than Pollard was. So Thomas is better than Carlu. Fact. Ooh, that's a big call. That's a big call, especially over the last 2 weeks. It's a very big call because Carlu Sardi has demolished 2 scrums in 2 weeks. So I think that Thomas Toy and Carlu Sardi, I don't think there's much between them. Carly Sardi is the best scrummager. Thomas Toy better than the loose. I think there's very little between those two. Vincent's been killing it. There's disrespect. Literally. Just breathe, Stephen. Viva La France. Stop trolling. Jesse Creel is shit and still better than Similani. Yeah, see, unfortunately, when you start saying stuff like that, there seems to be a bit of a trend coming through in your comments. So we won't feed that anymore. We didn't even talk about Similani, so I'm not quite sure why you're bringing him up. But obviously you seem to have a chip on your shoulder, so chat on. Mornay State is our best 10 at the moment. Yeah, I mean, literally, and that's a problem, isn't it? It's a problem that Mornay State is currently the best form number 10 in the country. It's a big problem because that can't be the case, and that's absolutely nothing on Mornay State's part. It's more about can the likes of Buddha Chamberlain, Tim Sweel, Mon Liebach, Chris Smith or step up and play rugby. I mean, I'm not even going to count Fred Zadinger because, oh my goodness, what I had to witness on Saturday it actually hurt my soul. I'm physically wounded from what I had to bloody watch. Is Pollard at the Tigers? Not yet. He'll still be at Montpellier this season. Yeah, I'll go with the next season. Sale Sharks. Where's will be my SA franchise given the amount of SA players? It's a bigger problem. My guy, I'm trolling. I know you're a Lions fan. Don't bring him. This is not a time to be going after Lions fan people. It's like you can't beat a man while he's down. Like you can't go after the stuff which is just so like embedded. Like I have to watch the Lions without a Vincent Suka right now, without Jordan Hendrickson, without who we got, who don't we have, and it's sad. It's sad. But I'm not going to dwell on it. Thankfully, the Lions don't play again until Saturday, and we don't play Currie Cup until next weekend, where our juniors get to go out and get bummed again. I think Similani has an attitude problem. Have the skills and mental's not right. I think the biggest problem with Wandisile Similani, and I hate to say this, is he's playing at the Lions because we just don't know how to give him any ball. If Wandisile Similani was playing for the Sharks, I think he'd be ripping it up. Yeah, but he must stay because I need him. Which new 10 would you add in the June Test squad? I don't even know. I don't even know. Who would you guys add? If you guys had to add a fly half, who are you adding? Not Jan Goosen. I'm taking Jan Goosen out of the equation. If you had to add one fly half to the box squad, who are you adding? Do you think Johan Goosen should get a start in the 3-test series? He's not even going to be fit by then. So we can't. Chris Smith and Buddha need to step up big time. I agree. Will the Bulls beat the Lions again, or will the Lions make an upset? If the Lions win on Saturday, I will drink more beer than you could possibly imagine. I would bathe in beer. I'd fill up a bath and just get a straw. Why isn't Pollard playing? I actually don't know what's going on with Pollard at the moment. It's a tough time being a Lions fan. You have no idea. Honestly, there's not a single young provincial flower who looks like he has the stuff. We need to start looking at school level. Similani should go to the Stormers. Jordan Hendrickson, I'll add Hendrickson. Chris Smith. Do you think the Welsh will beat us in the series because we struggle a lot against them? I think it should be quite interesting. FC Duplessis. Yeah, I'm keen to watch him tomorrow. I wouldn't say that he would necessarily make the June tests, but I'm actually excited to see him play. The South African who played for Edinburgh, Jacob van der Walt. Imagine if he had stayed, yeah. Bosch has the best boot from all the 10 outcasts. The problem is if you can't start 10 for your union, you can't go for 10 for the national side, can you? We'll take Similani. Hopefully that will convince you to come to the dark side. Fly half Rob de Prier. Yeah. Rob de Prier, shame. If he never gets another game, he might go down as one of the worst Springbok careers of all time. He literally just came on, got charged down, and that was his contribution. We lost to Wales and Washington because of him. Like, shame. Like, imagine that's your legacy. That's your Springbok legacy. Did you play for Springboks? Yeah. I threw away a game in 5 minutes and never played again. What? Greek was 10, 12. Who's Greek was 12? Martinez, yeah. No, yeah. I'd like to see Eddie Fischer playing a bit more, to be honest. I don't know why he didn't play more than the Lions. But we're going to start wrapping up. This has been a long show, actually. We're going to start wrapping up now. But Jordan Henderson maybe put a time to get them in the setup. Pollard spending his millions on vacation and girlfriends at practice kicking. I say nothing, but yes, I think you're pretty right. I don't know who the coach is who was taking over from the Lions Curry Cup, but I rated him highly, and then we got beaten to a pulp by Western Province. Bosch relegates us to 40-men defense. I'm excited for our youth at the Lions. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. We'll do what the Lions do. We'll suffer for a couple of years. We'll have a fantastic group. They'll play well for a year. They'll get bored. We'll suffer for years. We'll have another fantastic group. We've seen the story, haven't we? We saw the 2011 Curry Cup and then the years that followed. We then saw the 16, 17, 18 success, and now these are the years that follow. It's kind of just a never-ending cycle, isn't it? Emotional damage. Wrapping up. I only just arrived. Apologies, Grant. Yeah, it's worth scrolling back. People went after my boy, and I won't have it. I won't have it. But all is fair in love and war, people. It's fantastic being back on these live streams. I love these shows because they're a lot of fun, and it gives me a chance to actually engage with you guys properly, which is a bit harder to do on the watch-alongs. We will be live for tomorrow. I don't know which games. We obviously will be live for the two big ones, which are the Cheetahs Bulls and the Sharks Western Province. I might be live for the other game, but I don't think so. I think I might, unfortunately, might have other commitments. But hopefully we will be at least live for the latest two games. So I'll see you guys there tomorrow. Please do smash like on the video on the way out. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Finally, the SAA lineup. Right, I'm just going to give one off the top of my head, and I would go off the top of my head. SAA lineup. Tjewa Steenekamp, Jan Krabbelaar, Carl Usardi, Simon Murat, Ruan Nokia. Then Marcel Gautier, maybe. Well, I'd like to see somebody younger. So maybe a Let's go. Albert Lowe, Evan Roos, Vincent Tuka. He's not capped, so you can go Grant Williams at number 9. We'll bring him back in Bose P. I'd like to see one of those two. Maybe Daniel Hedges going to play one game. Jordan Henderson at 10. 11, I would go up to Fassi. 12, I would go. Who would I go at 12? Who would I go at 12? Who am I going at 12? Now, you need more 12 stepping up, you know. You want to go at 12? I mean, I don't know, Dan DBC. I like Dan DBC. He's not playing particularly well at the moment. Can we go Harold Forster maybe? But how old is Harold Forster these days? Is he still a viable 12? I'm going to say for SAA because you kind of want somebody who's still. Yeah, 28. So I'll go Harold Forster at 12. I would go Similani at 13 as long as he started playing well. I would then go 14, maybe Madosh Tamwitner, or Edel van der Merwe actually, if he keeps playing well. I think he's looking good at the Lions. And 15, I would go Tyron Green. That would be my SAA. I would say Willemse at 12, but I don't really feel like he's an SAA player. He's far too embedded in the Springbok squad to be an SAA player, if you get what I'm saying. Whereas those players, in theory, wouldn't be part of the squad. And yes, Sardi, best scrummager in the country at the moment by a country mile. When Frans Malherbe comes back, we'll have a chat. But until then, the best scrummager as a tight head belongs to the fridge that is Carly Sardi. And on that note, people, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Keep safe. Go to watch the games if you can. And I'll chat to you guys very soon.